Okay. I mean, we could also pretend as well that we didn't have a pre-conversation.
We can do that. We can do that. That's fine. That's fine.
No, I'm joking. I'm joking. So, yeah. So, would you like to say how?
Yeah.
I mean, where you're from, who you are,
Right.
and also like to introduce yourself.
Right. So, I mean, Donat knows me now, but yeah, for the audiences watching, I mean, it's thanks for having me here, Donat. Really appreciate it. My name's Aryan, and I'm from India, and I'm currently a taught postgraduate student at the University of Leeds. I'm pursuing masters in signal processing and communications at the Department of Electrical and Electronics Engineering. Before this, I was doing my undergraduate, that's Bachelor's of Technology in the Department of Electronics and Telecommunications, which is very similar to what I'm doing right now. At least I think 80% similar to what I'm doing right now. And prior to that, I was an engineering aspirant always. I was always keen on doing this thing because I've been really inclined towards the technical side of life. I've been focusing on developing different products. So what actually got me to do engineering was my passion for cars. So I love automobiles a lot. But when I say automobiles, as conventional as it may seem, we're talking about the body of a car or maybe the engine, but that was not it for me. There are different aspects that could enthrall you about a vehicle. So for me, it was the electronic side of the vehicle because you have a lot of different approaches towards that. You have a very array of discrete array of different components that actually make a car far more better than what it is. So it's not just always the engine or the body that makes it look fancy. Other things as well, which is what I was inclined towards. After that, yeah, I decided I'd do my engineering. I was in India. I studied in Bombay. So my undergraduate was in Bombay. That's where I'm from. I've been staying for almost about 15, 16 years now. Born and brought up there. And then, yeah, eventually I decided I should do my master's as well, in a stream which is very similar to what I did my undergraduate in because I would rather be comfortable. And then the scope that my stream has right now in this automotive sector is vast. It often goes unnoticed because automotive sector is mainly comprised of mechanical engineers who work on the engine, the body of a car, but you do have the electronics playing a huge role in it. And I think with advancements in technology and futuristic development, you look at vehicles today, everything is going to get electric soon. So I doubt the mechanical aspect of it is. I think it will be short-lived in quite some time from now. Although there would be requirements. I'm not saying it's going to be completely. It's not going to get extinct. I'm saying the role of mechanical engineers is going to be a little limited, considering electric cars are going to be based on the electrical and electronic side of the vehicle. So that's where my interest was, always has been, and that's what allowed me to pursue this. Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, that's awesome because we spoke off camera about the startups. Well, yeah, as we said, we defined it as a startup still, of course. And that you started with, it was a family business as well, that sort of thing. Correct. And that's quite interesting that you had an interest in this from an early age as well, and how it usually, the automobile and then interested in like cars and that sort of thing. A lot of people actually go with the mechanical engineering side of things and actually pursue that path. But as you say, I assume you have some sort of futuristic vision from a young age, or some sort of influence, maybe from I don't know, family, friends, so that they might be in a good way to pursue. Because conventionally, I assume, it's mechanical engineering in that way. That's the most common, I would say, as well.
To be very honest, I think I wouldn't really call myself a visionary per se, but if you look at, I think I would rather say that I was at the right place at the right time, right? So I was born at the right time. I'm right now in the right place because I've experienced this shift, or I've experienced the automotive industry transcend in real life towards the electric vehicle, and I think fortunately I'm in the right time to explore and simultaneously also decide what I want to do. Because if you look at about even 4 or 5 years back from now, maybe 6 years back from now, if I go back into the past, I think electric vehicles have actually. I think talk about Tesla. Tesla had made it start a long time ago. Majorly in the United States. That's where it all started. India had not seen the face of electric vehicles. It still hasn't until now. There's a really small proportion of electric vehicles in India, but being in, so I mean, internet's made the world a really smaller place, right? So we're pretty much connected. You know what's happening everywhere around the world. So I think being in India, I realized that electric vehicles are going to take the run soon. And you also notice this, right? So in India, we've seen high fuel prices. We've seen all these factors that are affecting the transportation sector. And the biggest I think the thought that I had, I think the thought that influenced my mind the most was, to be very honest, during the pandemic. Because during the pandemic there was strict rules. There were strict rules that were imposed all over the world. There was lockdown. There was a nationwide lockdown, and well, India was it happened to follow it very strictly, and India has done great throughout the entire COVID period. So if you look at how things have changed during COVID, I think it was a really bad time for humanity, because people have lost their loved ones, and it was a horrible time, right? Very sad to even think of it. But I fortunately, I think I'm grateful to God. I think everything was fine and well at home. So I got to experience the other side of it, which is I saw how nature was healing. If you look at the sky, if you look at the atmosphere, if you breathe the air every day, every evening, I would see there was a really big difference between how the world was when there was no COVID and how it is now. So I could see that change. You would notice the air quality index (AQI), it's just going higher because the air quality is increasing, right? The quality of air is better. Yeah. You would see pictures of oceans and everything being circulated. It's even more cleaner right now, right? So if you see the biodiversity, the national and the global biodiversity, it had taken a step up. Right, so the biodiversity rate had actually increased because nature was healing. There was no carbon emissions. There was no any sort of pollution. All majority forms of pollution were all cancelled out because of this lockdown and every sort of movement plummeting down to zero. So what I tend to notice was I saw that there was no traffic on the road. There were no cars, nothing. So you could imagine. You could see the difference. Being in India, I could see the difference that when there were no cars at all for months together, or years, I would say, I could see what kind of an impact it had on the quality of air, what kind of an impact it had on the atmosphere, the air that we're breathing, how it had actually beautifully impacted the nature. I wouldn't say impacted, it had a very nice effect on the nature, right?
Yes.
So I realized that then I started doing my research. I said maybe if that's how it is, if that's how badly the transportation sector is affecting our environment, there's going to be a way to deal with it, right? So how do you possibly deal with it? You cannot stop transportation, right? People obviously need their vehicles to transport, public transport. And even if you urge people to use public transport, what percentage or what vast majority of people are you going to influence by that thought? Not a lot of people are going to do it. Because even then, if public transport exists, you're still going to have some level of pollution. So there's got to be a permanent solution for this, right? That's where the idea of EVs, actually it started to take place. It started to build up really strong. I had really strong belief for electric vehicles.
EV being electrical vehicles.
Yeah. So because I did my research, I would see the grams of carbon dioxide, the carbon footprint that the emissions per vehicle, per household, I would say. So if you look at it in grams, it's a very big difference. I think about 300 grams to 43 grams from just one car. But when you talk about an EV, it's down to about 30, 40. Again, don't put me on my figures. I may not be completely accurate, because it was just a research which influenced my thought of having the faith in electric vehicles even more. But it was, if I did my research right, I think that's what it is. So you would realize that transportation accounts to, I think, about 27% of this carbon footprint, right?
Transportation including trains, cars,
air, by road, by sea. So air, sea, and land. So all three forms of transportation would contribute to roughly about 30%, 27 to 30% of this global carbon footprint emission, which is a huge. I think again, put to figures, I think 56 gigatons per year or something like that. And that's massive, 56 gigatons of carbon dioxide emission. So what's exactly happening is, if you look at it, the world is progressing. People are always focusing on developments and constant futuristic developments, and that won't stop, because people constantly innovate, people ideate, and eventually execute. But what goes unnoticed and what goes neglected, and often not intended, is the damage that's caused as a result of this development. So I may want to develop something, but in the process of doing that, I'm usually damaging the environment as well, because of the outcome, maybe the byproduct of whatever I'm doing could also be damaged. So I realized that if you guys focus on electric vehicles, what's going to happen is, that huge number, that big number of carbon footprint that we are seeing in gigatons, I think you're going to cut that by half, right? You're going to put that at half. So the amount of the impact that transportation has on this emission is going to go down to half. So it's going to be beneficial because it's going to be a step ahead. It's going to be a big step forward. And once you reach a position where I think you established completely, or maybe like a 90% or an 80% electric vehicle infrastructure all over the world, then I think, you can focus on the other counterparts that are probably leading to, pollution. So you can focus on that. But I think the most significant part right now is to tone down this carbon dioxide emission and carbon footprint, as I might say. And then that's the best way to go about this through an electric vehicle concept. That's how it all started for me. So it was, it kind of, I mean, if you talk about my dad and my mom, they are not completely inclined into the automotive industry. My dad's always been on the travel side. He's currently the CEO of an Indian rural fintech travel and, fintech and travel company. So they have
of course, you mentioned the entrepreneurial side, like your background being your mom and dad that way as well. Interesting.
So my mom used to work earlier. My dad's a CEO right now. So I think even when you're at a, let's say, very senior or let's say at a very I think when you're at the top of an hierarchy, even in an organization, you pretty much you tend to behave like an entrepreneur. So I've seen my dad do the same. So being a CEO, it's also you're basically the short caller in the company. Obviously, you have your directors and you have the board of directors. You have a very formal layer of hierarchy to follow. But being at a respectable position often comes with a lot of responsibilities, and that's one way to think about it and work in that tangent is by thinking that you own the company, right? Only then you'll be able to establish and successfully establish a good organization. So so that's come from my dad. But then if you see, so because of my fascination of cars has actually led me to a lot of things. In Bombay, you have a supercar group. I eventually became a part of that group. I have a supercar, so I had that. I got exposure to a group of people, a group of high net worth individuals. I would say you have a lot of people in this group, right? So if you talk about a supercar group, as people often say right now, a lot of young people can relate. They would love to talk to somebody who was a supercar because they would want to ask, how do you get there? How do you buy it? So something like that, right? So I got an exposure to a group as such, right? So it's one of the largest supercar groups in India. So I got to meet really influential and affluential people at a really young age. So I understood what life was, right? So being an entrepreneur is not about just making money or earning money. So but when you look at how these people think, how these people talk, their approach to solving different. So they are all about solving problems, right? So they don't want to work somewhere. They don't want to work for anyone. They want to work for themselves. They identify a problem, they solve it, right? And that's the way they do it is by establishing an organization. So I've seen these people. They would have all sorts of fancy cars, but then you would start to wonder: does a job pay you that good to have a fancy car? No, obviously. So there's done something, right? But you're more interested in what they did, right? You're not interested in what car they're driving. They would be driving fancy cars. That's interesting. I'm saying, but what they did to get that. So what are they exactly doing? So I met people whose approaches were completely different, right? So they used to see problems. They used to identify solutions, right? So it's not always about seeing a problem, but it's more important to identify the right solution. So some people could be, they might be having insurance agency. Some people would be working, for a tech company. Some people would be owning tech companies. Some people would be working, let's say they would have a cybersecurity company. So you have people who own different companies, but they're solving different problems at the same time. And so I think the financial aspect of it, the money or the I think the cars and all the fancy or the flamboyant attributes, I think they are a byproduct of what you do, right? So if you're on the pursuit of, let's say, finding a solution to a very big problem and you're solving it globally for all the people across the world, or even in your country or in your city, then I think you don't need to really focus on how much money you make or what, because these things are byproducts, right? So what you need to really focus on is let's say you have a problem, how you gonna solve that problem, and how perfectly can you execute that problem with the right team, right? Because there's a lot of investment that you have to make. Startups are not just a thought and an idea put together. That's not just a startup. You could have a solution, but implementation is the real part of it. So how much money you're putting in, what kind of a team you have, Is everybody on the team aligned with your goals and vision? Are you all able to work in in sync with each other, right?
Yeah.
So also, because it's a team eventually, right? Eventually, it's a team of people. It's not just you alone who's doing things. It's a team of people who's helping you establish and set up a solution for the people. So it's all about service. So how would you serve the people in the community or people of the
the pursuit is not the money really. The pursuit is giving value, providing value. Right.
Because if you chase money, you would never be able to make money. It's
an interesting paradox.
Yeah, because it's very ironical. So if you constantly chase money, if you constantly focus on money, that how much money I make, I want a car, I want a house. I mean, these could be factors that probably motivate you to do more work, but it's not the end. It's not the end game. Your end game is to make sure that I think you're able to serve the people of the community. So I think service is what it is, right? You look at all the big founders today. Look at Elon Musk, you look at Bill Gates, you look at Jeff Bezos, whoever it is, what they're actually doing is they're not, they're making money, but they're serving the people, right? You could be making cars, but what you're doing is basically you're helping people, get these electric vehicles, right? You could be making, Elon Musk is probably looking for life on Mars, he's probably looking for interplanetary transport. So what he's probably doing is thinking way beyond anybody's time, thinking way beyond decades, what could offer beyond decades. So it takes a lot of imagination, it takes a lot of skill, innovation to think something like that. You talk about Bill Gates, you talk about Satya Nadella, you talk about all the famous, even Indian entrepreneurs, Ratan Tata. So these people are visionaries because what they're doing is they're serving the people, right, in different ways.
It's interesting, but as you mentioned, that's not, as you mentioned, of course, enough, the implementation. And it's funny that I think all of what they have in common, which is also quite interesting, is the technical side. I think Jeff Bezos, electrical engineering. Bill Gates, I'm not sure, some sort of computer science background.
I think so.
And then Elon Musk, physics, computer science.
Yeah, and
what the hell?
That's and so again, what I think the biggest problem is, people look at these entrepreneurs, right? People look at these entrepreneurs. They say most of them are dropouts. Most of them didn't do anything. Most of them didn't study. They had a good background. You talk about people who want to Stanford. You talk about Steve Jobs. Maybe I think he went to Stanford or something. I'm not really sure. So what our generation, what the people today, the young guys, what they say is these people have dropped out. We might as well take the same path, but understand why they dropped out. They had a problem to solve. They had this idea that they believed that they knew was going to work and change the lives of people one day. Whoever thought that Apple today is going to be one of the most desirable products, irrespective of the price point at which it sells. Apple today is about being a lifestyle. You may own an iPhone, you may own an iPad, you have a complete Apple ecosystem. It's a lifestyle. I wouldn't categorize Apple to be a necessity product or a product that's meant for necessity or just phones. It's a lifestyle. You have an Apple device, you're experiencing something completely unique, way different and way better from the regular smartphones or the regular devices around you. So, it took a lot of great thinking, innovation and ideation to build Apple and take it to that point, right? Because somebody like Steve Jobs, he was a great marketer, so he could market his products in such a way where people, made it desirable for people, right? All the price, it's really expensive, $1,000 smartphone. Somebody can say I would get a 300, 400. There's competition. And if you talk about Apple's price point, Apple is not competitive with this price point because it makes really expensive smartphones. In India, these Apple phones are really expensive. They would cost about £1,400 in India.
Interesting.
Yeah. In UK.
Why is it more?
It's not locally manufactured in India, so you don't have these plants that are locally manufacturing in India. So if you talk about US, if you talk about UK, I think that plants close by, so it's easier to have access, but you don't have a local. So Apple is coming up with a plant now, but all this while they never did. So the phones are really expensive, the cars are expensive. So understand, even after all of that, the main goal is to make the product more desirable. People with no money or people with no status of having a £1,400 smartphone would rather work for it to get it. They would want to get that phone. So, it takes a lot of great thinking, belief in your idea, faith in your idea, and it just does not have to be any solution, right? It has to be a very legitimate problem that people face. And for that, you need to put yourself in the shoes of other people. You cannot think in your point of view, right? What could not be a problem to you could be a problem for a million other people, right? You need to constantly think on their point of view. You need to understand what the people want, what people are looking at. Which industry is facing problem that I can solve. So for me, example, other than the automotive sector of lately, I have started realizing that even in UK and in India, I think the semiconductor industry is a very big industry. It's a big business, right? Now, if you look at the companies are basically relying on that, right? So you talk about indium phosphide, you talk about gallium nitride, talk about SI, silicon carbide. So you talk about all these semiconductors. So silicon SiCNG are basically high power. They use for high power operations. Right?
Can I just say this is very interesting that you're going into this, because we haven't actually, in my actual course, I'm a first year, I haven't actually covered semiconductors. So it's very interesting to me. So please go into the materials and how.
I would like really because it's something that we've started doing. So if you talk about semiconductors, right, you have high frequency applications and you have high power applications, right? So high frequency semiconductors would have really high switching rates. So the electron mobility is really high in high frequency semiconductors. So they can be used for operations which require really high speeds of electric fluctuations. But if you talk about high power semiconductors, they can work under high power operations, which are you basically talking about cars. So if you talk about cars, you have 30 kilowatts of battery, 50 kilowatts of battery. That heavy duty, right? So because they run a car for X number of years. So you need really high power applications, and it's a high power application. So semiconductors like SiC and GaN are usually in demand for onboard chargers for electric vehicles, right? So if I talk about these sort of semiconductors, I think there's a massive global shortage, right? There are because there's no fabrication lab, tape out. I think.
What did you define as a fabrication lab? Sorry.
So fabrication lab is basically you have they are basically laboratories where you fabricate. So the entire semiconductor designing and the fabrication process happens there. So to make I think one chip takes about 6 months, right? So you have there's a process called as photolithography. So it's a room where the lights are completely yellow. You would be wearing a hazmat suit. It's yellow because it doesn't work with white light. So it's very sensitive to white light. So the lights are supposed to be yellow in the room. So these fabrication labs are important in order to so you first design your semiconductor, and then you have all the process. You have your CAD. So after that you have your tape outs. After that the schematic is made, the layouts are made, and then you have the fabrication process pretty much towards the end. And the fabrication process. So you imagine, right? If I'm saying one chip or maybe like one component could take about 6 months. Producing millions of those in a short time would require a huge infrastructure, the fabrication labs. So I think there are not many of those across the world, right? Not a lot of people manufacturing semiconductors or these important components of it, these important counterparts across the globally, I would say. So it's a big business. So that's a big problem to solve. Somebody's thinking of making like a fabrication lab. Somebody's planning something that would help in the production of semiconductors. It's a big problem, right? Now, obviously, when you have that scope and you have that vision, now this is never going to be possible, because this is going to be research and development on this particular idea would continue for decades, because you have your high power applications are constantly going to increase. You're going to have reality, you're going to have augmented reality, you're going to have electric vehicles, or you may have flying cars. You may have a lot of things consuming a lot of power, a lot of high power application stuff. So for that, research and development, so I think obviously your SiC and GaN can only take you up to one point. Maybe after 10 years, you may need a much more powerful, compound, right? Compound semiconductors. So what are you going to do then? So the research and development on this has to continue. So it's a field that's never going to die. It's never going to die out. It's constantly going to be in need of. So somebody working towards that. So you got to identify what problem you're solving, right? You got to solve the problem on a large scale for industries, for people, right? Because eventually industries are run by people, so you're solving it for them, right? So when you identify these problems, so then that's when you realize that you're working towards something real, and maybe at the cost of what, a degree, that's fine. I feel if you're doing it at the cost of a degree, it's all right. So. But then if you have no real idea, if you have no real solution, if you are, let's say, completely unplanned, and if you're just influenced by the thought of being a millionaire by dropping out from college and just doing a startup for the name of it, then it's not right?
It's not going to be enough. It's not going to be enough to pull you through the interest and motivation sphere.
A startup is what exactly? It's because there's this crazy wave of startups, right? Everybody in this generation, in this world today, is focusing on startup. But understand, the real meaning of a startup and the true meaning of an organization or a company is when you're solving a problem, right? You're not just doing it for the sake of it, just to be identified as a co-founder or a founder or a director, right? So the meaning of, the real reason behind doing this, why people do it and why a lot of people are successful today is because they identify the right problem at the right time. So I think your time is really important. right? So like I think where did that inclination towards EV come from? I think it's all about the timing. So I think I'm at the right time where I'm seeing the transition of the automotive segment from combustion engine, right, IC engine, to battery, right, battery run, hybrid electric vehicles, right, PEV, all these things. So I'm at the right time to identify it, and I can make a right call as to what I want to do in my career. So people have to, the timing is really important, and then the most important thing is the team, right? Then your most important thing is the total, I think the TAM, right? Total addressable market. So you have to see how many, at what scale are you solving the problem, right? That's also important. Are you solving it globally? Are you solving it within your country? Are you it has to be sizable. I mean, it has to be really big, right? It doesn't have to be a very small, thing that over a very niche segment. You can do something which runs only on on value and not volumes, but
currently for what the company that you founded, I'm not sure what it's actually called.
It's something that I'm a co-founder. So I've been a co-founder. So we have two founders in the company. I initially joined as an intern, and then I approached to work with the board of directors of the company.
Right.
The reason
that's for India. That's specifically. Okay. It's targeting India and the Indian market as well. Right.
So again, like I said, it all happened in the duration of COVID. I think 2019, 2020, 2021. So 2020, 2021 is probably the most happening year. So it was again, the idea of this company was to eliminate carbon footprint, to reduce the carbon footprint content, bring it down, and how we start is by putting micromobility into place. The reason being, talk about micromobility in the UK, you would see a lot of people riding segways, hoverboards on the streets, which is a really good thing. It's a really convenient thing to do, but it also has its pros because you're easily cancelling out on bikes or scooters that make use of fuel. Although their consumption is less, but you're like zeroing it down, right? You're completely getting it down to zero. So what's going to happen at times like these is, you're basically, you start expanding. So infrastructure is developing, roads are being developed, right? So your distances to travel is going to fall short, right? Your time taken to travel is going to fall short. And so if we feel that, it's always easier for a larger segment of the Indian market to, get on something cheaper, something that runs on electricity, something that's easier to charge, and something that you can keep at your home. It can be next to your dining table for all you know it's being charged. It's a very convenient thing to do. It's not putting any sort of constraints on you. You might as well take it in the trunk. You can carry it in your car as well. It's not like it's not something that is very difficult to carry. So it's we're just making it convenient for the people, and then at the same time we're selling an experience, right? So we do not want somebody to just find it convenient, and so we want to sell an experience. So when you're riding our products, when you're being on our electric bikes, we want to make sure that you understand what the purpose of it is. The purpose of it is not to just our vision is to reduce the carbon footprint and make the world a greener place. But the purpose, why a user should buy, why somebody should buy our products, it's all about convenience, right? Would you rather get?
And that's the. Sorry, can I just cut it? That's the actual product that you guys are selling. It's the electric bike.
It's the electric bike.
Just to make it clear. It's the electric bike, yes. Okay.
Yeah. It's an electric bike and an electric scooter. Segways, hoverboards, right? And even go-karts. I think, go-karts are pretty much for the niche segment of people. But if you talk about the segways, bikes, so understand, I mean, the traffic conditions in India today are pathetic. It's terrible, right? Would you rather stay stuck in traffic for about 2 hours or maybe an hour? Or would you rather make it to work in time? Would you rather make it to whoever?
The problem of overcrowding.
The overcrowding.
Is there a problem of overcrowding?
Crazy,
Right.
If you in India, to travel a distance of about 17 kilometers, it's going to take you beyond an hour. 1 hour, 60 minutes is surprising on a good day. But it's easy to take you beyond 1 hour because of the number of cars that are there on the road, which is a menacing.
17 kilometers, did you say? 17 kilometers.
17.
Wow.
1.7 is way over 60 minutes. It's gonna easily take you about I think 75, 80 minutes. That's almost close to an hour and a half on a weekday, right? So that's insane. I could travel with a flight. So with a flight, I could travel 700 kilometers in an hour and a half. I'm not making a very theoretical comparison here, but I'm saying the distances, if you take 17 kilometers, if you're covering 1 kilometer in 1 minute, that's 17 minutes, 2 minutes, 34 minutes. That max, how long should it take for me to cover 1 kilometer, right? But over here, it's way beyond that. So roughly about 4 minutes, way more than 4-5 minutes per kilometer. So you can imagine 1 kilometer would be any stretch where you're stuck in that 1 kilometer for about 4-5 minutes, right? So that's a very big, distance to cover in a very, it's a very short distance to cover in a long span of time. So would you rather be stuck there? So I think the way to go about this is, see, electric vehicles are going to take its onset in India anytime soon, and in a few years from now, India is very optimistic that a large population of the vehicles are going to be electric. So I think so there are two ways to go about this. So when we thought of the idea, so you have the electric bikes and everything, you can make people accustomed to use the products, because they would rather than cancel out using a proper bike or maybe like a proper scooter, because that contributes to some sort of pollution. We don't want that. We want to make lives easier for people by giving them an experience as well at the same time convenience. So these are the two most important things. So because you talk about Apple is all about the experience. To be very honest, why exactly Apple is famous? There's nothing very innovative ever since Steve Jobs was unfortunately passed away. There's nothing innovative about Apple, or even during his presidency. Apple had they had taken a leap forward in making some technological advancements. So if you talk about Apple today, Apple, you talk about there are phones which could be technically higher in terms of features. There could be phones which are way more advanced. So the reason Apple is there because of the user interface. So you talk about the user interface, it's smooth, it's fluidic, it's not choppy, it's extremely it's lovely, right? It's flawless user interface, and that's what people are digging for. If I told you a phone never hangs, a phone constantly remains at the same speed for years together, it's going to buy you. You're going to buy that, right? So it's the same thing that we imply here. So experience is really important. So electric vehicles, obviously, because it's every company is experimenting at this stage. Every company is not completely has not completely rendered a perfect electric vehicle.
Yes.
Right? Because there are going to be a lot of glitches. There could be a lot of fires that are being caught. I think Tesla also faced that at its initial stages of production. So I think a lot of companies are going to face that for a really long time. And so what we are doing is we basically none of that has happened with us. So we've kind of 9bot Segway. It's a US multinational company, and what we're basically looking at is reliability as well. So while we're giving experience, we're giving you convenience. We're also making it extremely reliable for you. Your experience of owning an electric vehicle is not going. It's going to be completely hassle-free, right? We do not want your electric vehicle to be catching fires. We do not want any sort of electrical malfunction going around in your vehicle while you're using it. We want it to be completely flawless, right? That took for years. That's what we've done for the last 10 years. 9bot Segway has been doing that for the last 10, 15 years. They have made this benchmark of excellence when it comes to electric micromobility. And so partnering up with them has also helped us a lot in that way. So carrying the brand name also.
Can I just...
Yeah.
Sorry, can I just add, Aryan, if that's okay, sorry to cut you. Sure. Would it be okay because I could hear the buzzing, the phone, would I be okay if
to just
use the phone? Yeah, it's vibrating.
I wouldn't have noticed. I'm really sorry.
Nah, sir, that's all right. That's no worries. I was just letting you know, just in case as well.
I can keep it on my bed, so you wouldn't have to hear that.
Oh, okay. I just also wanted to add, this is also interesting because you also mentioned, the Segway, the electric bike, right, and also the go-karts as well. This could be also interesting that potentially, I suspect, I'm not sure what the future vision is, but also to move into, the actual vehicles of actual automobiles.
So it does give you an experience of riding a proper electric vehicle. I wouldn't say it's completely suitable for the road conditions in India. Because the road conditions in India are not completely developed, but yet to some extent. So you can obviously use it, but it's got more of a very it's more of a leisure product. It's the users of a go-kart are very much to, I think, more like about you just go around, play with it, have a fun time, ride it on a go-kart track. So it's a bit more about having your own spare time and how you can play around with the go-kart. So it does give you an exact feeling of how an electric vehicle is like, but it's not going to be the very same because go-karts and cars are completely different, right? So, but if you talk about go-karting it's a sport, it's an activity, it's an event. Go-karting happens all around the world. So I think if you're talking replacing go-karts with these things, that's the direction in which you can obviously go. You can tap Because
I just meant you moving, the actual company moving into, transitioning into, once there's whatever X amount of value that you guys are either producing and selling. I don't know if it's actual future vision, because as you mentioned, you're interested in automobiles. And then you mentioned it might be of interest, I don't know, to actually manufacture later on.
So the plan is that what we're going to do is, so currently we've started up with the micromobility segment. The reason being, you talk about cars. So when you're talking about a startup, right? A startup needs a lot of investment, right? You need a lot of rounds of funding, a lot of investment that goes in. After all that, because the most important part is the capital. People often think that that goes unnoticed, but capital is the most important. Without capital, you can never have a startup. So you can never have a startup with zero amount of money. You would obviously need some huge sum of money. Maybe minimum. I don't know. There's no minimum per se, but I've never seen somebody have a startup with bare minimum amount of money. Somebody's always invested money, because you would need to hire people. You would need to. So even if it takes you to be in law for some time, because you'll be paying out of your own pockets. It could happen for some time until you reach break even, and then you start being profitable. But
and also putting into account that your product is physical, so you to manufacture that as well, to actually bring it to life at the very, very start.
Yeah,
of course.
So that does happen. So the product is physical, so it gets manufactured. So 9-bot manufactures. Most of the components are done by 9-bot, so it comes as a completely knockdown unit. It's a CKD. Then it's completely assembled. It's assembled back in India, and then it's sold to the customer. Right? So it's locally assembled, so that it's cost effective that way. So you talk about these bikes. So what's gonna happen is, what our plan is. We started off with this because getting straight away into cars is a very capital intensive job, and you wouldn't be able to exactly identify what the problems are. So tomorrow you make an electric vehicle. So for example, Tesla, it faced a huge loss at its first at its first round. So when it first started making, so it paid, I think, about $100 million was in loss, because of the problems that Tesla used to give to the customers. It still exists, but I have a very small nomination. But if you talk about how Tesla started off, people used to say there were fires, there were cars, taking, because it had the autopilot, there were cars that were taking wrong decisions on the road. The AI algorithms were not right. So there were a lot of issues, a lot of glitches, right? So for somebody like us, it was, we wouldn't want to get right into the automotive segment, considering it's a very capital intensive thing. It's a big risk. So tomorrow, let's say it doesn't work out, you'll be facing a lot of loss. You do not really want to be in that situation until unless you're sure that you have that much of capital funding or backup or something that you can rely on, right? So for something like Tesla, Elon Musk had already been with PayPal by then. He would talk about all these other companies that he had already founded. So I think capital for him, and I think he comes from a upper middle class or maybe like a rich family. So he already was a millionaire, to be very honest, to begin with. So the problem of funding, the problem of facing a downfall wouldn't have really affected him that much. Although it did, I'm not saying it did, but it's okay. It could have covered up. But if you talk about somebody like us, in terms of this industry, this micromobility industry, we've just begun, right? We've just begun our venture. So we got to be very cautious about how much money we are investing. What's the return? What's the most reliable and the most safest path to safest region to go into, right? So the safest game for us was to start off with micromobility, because we see a huge market for it. I think by 2025 or 2010, micromobility itself is going to be roughly about a $70 or $100 billion industry, right? It's a very big industry. And we talk about being like acquiring, let's say, 3% of that industry. You can do the math. It's a huge number, right? So it's like about $21 million, close to about $210 million. So that's a big number as well. So sometimes you also take the financial aspects as to where you want to see yourself at, what risks are involved, whether or not you're ready to take those risks. So because those are really important, right? If you just jump into a business, deep dive into it, what if tomorrow it doesn't run, right? You always have to take into account that a business it's not necessary that it'll always be successful, right? You would obviously tend to make flaws, because which a business could go all the way down from where it has. There are, even after you're successfully established, there could be decisions that you make which could completely put it down. You could go bankrupt, right? There are a lot of factors involved.
Have you experienced those sorts of challenges recently?
I haven't, but how I know about it is because of, I used to watch documentaries, I have seen movies, and like I say, I have had exposure to be with a lot of these, influential people who today are extremely rich in India. They have these fancy ass cars, and I think you'll have to beep the word after fancy. So it's more like they have these cool cars, and as a young guy, I was always keen to know what they did, right? What was that? How did that ever happen? So when I found out, some people run this company, some people do that, but I also realized it was not at the first iteration that they got there. After several attempts, after several iterations, right, maybe 2, 3, 4, the final version of their business would have actually worked, which has proven to be completely scalable. And that business has allowed them to get wherever they are. So that's the fundamental rule. So when you're doing a business, right, you need to understand that a business solely doesn't work on the concept of you start up, you fuel, you push all sorts of capital into it, you get a team. It just doesn't work like that. There are multiple factors involved, and a business could always go down from where it started, or it could always touch peak climax and then it would fall down. So for somebody like us, since we had just ventured into it, we wanted to take the safest routes. The safest routes was to start off with electric micromobility because there's not a huge ton of cost involved. Partnering with 9bot helps with the manufacturing. Get it there, assemble it, not a major cost involved. All you have to see is care about is for logistics. So you have to make sure that your products are safely delivered to the respectable addresses. And then you after sales is really important. So after sales is good to it's important to maintain contact with the customer because that adds to the customer experience, right? So after sales is important. So those kind of things have really distribution line. I think sales these things were really important for us considering. See, the products that we're selling they lie in the vicinity on average about 500 to 600 pounds. Okay, that's the average price of our products, right? Cheapest comes to kids, it's about 270 pounds. Right? The most expensive it's the go-kart, but the go-kart's roughly about 1100, 1200 pounds. But if I talk about something like slightly lesser than that, over the bikes, the most expensive bike sells for about 800 pounds. So
can I just say can I just also add? I'm curious about this because there's, as you mentioned, there's a big market for this, especially in the future as well. There's going to be how do you actually stay competitive with your technical? Is it the product, the manufacturing or not the manufacturing? Sorry, the actual product. Is there something technical that it gives extra to the customer, or is there something along the lines in between that, where the service that it provides, where I don't know, delivery of the go-karts, for example? How do you stay different and niche?
This is a very simple rule of business. So that you could be entering a very competitive industry, or you could be entering an industry which is where there's no competition at all. Entering a very competitive industry requires you to have really, really big differences between your products and the competitors' products because only price difference is not going to cut it. For example, the smartphone industry is a highly competitive industry. If Apple is making a smartphone for about 700 pounds, and if I say I'm going to make a smartphone for about 550 pounds, it's just 150 pounds. Somebody would rather opt for Apple, no matter how advanced my phone is, because it's a much more reliable brand, right? So my company could be new. Apple has been in existence for the past decade, even beyond that. So somebody would obviously pay 150 pounds just for the reliability because Apple is better, and also the status that comes along with it, rather than going for something new. So it's a highly competitive. So if I'm getting into a highly competitive market, this applies for any entrepreneur. They should know. Most of the entrepreneurs should know. If you're getting into a highly competitive market, your differences with your competitors couldn't just be minor. Your differences have to be something large that the customers should say that, okay, might as well go for that. So if you're, let's say, just again, a very basic example, Apple is making smartphones for 700 pounds, but if you make a smartphone for about 250, 300 pounds, you say that, listen, 350 pounds, but I'm offering something way more than, and then it all depends on how you market your product and how you're positioned in this entire industry. But if you talk about an industry where there's no competition at all, you can feel free to go in and experiment, right? So you talk about the micromobility industry. When I say globally, it's about $40-50 billion. Tomorrow, in the next decade, it's going to scale to about $200 billion. So India is a very small percentage or a fraction of this $50 billion or $60 billion industry of micromobility, right? Micromobility is far bigger of an industry in other countries across the world, US, UK, highly developed places. India, has I think the infrastructure up to now. I think what I've seen wasn't meant, but I think because of the development that the product had, the products could often be tested on even rough surfaces, uneven surfaces, and I think the products have paved their way into being used for even rough purposes, right? Heavy duty purposes. So back in the day, it wasn't like that, right? So today you have products coming in with all sorts of suspensions. Our products come with suspensions, smooth ride quality. We have the pneumatic air tires and everything. So it's not prone to puncture. It's not prone to any sort of damage on the types of roads that India has. And in the last couple of years, I think the road conditions in India have actually stepped up. That they've gone up, by a couple of levels. So it was the right time for us to come in, experiment, because we currently do not have a lot of competitors. I would say we barely have even one or two, right? For us, the biggest, the unique selling point is, the price point, right? Although so we are selling a premium product at not a very premium price point. We are selling a very high premium product at a very affordable or a very marginable price point. It's not really expensive. If you look at it, for whatever we are offering, it's very competitive. The second is we're selling an experience. We're selling reliable stuff, right? We do not deal with something that's not reliable, right? We tell people to test these products to its max limits, right? We use it at the max speed, use it in all sorts of conditions, make the conditions worse for the item, because we know that the product is going to withstand and it's going to go completely fine through all these conditions. So I think the price point is really important for us, because considering India is a price sensitive place, right? So India is that one country where a lot of people, because you have it's very diverse in terms of its population. You have people who belong to the highly upper middle class, and then the rich people, and then at the same time you have a lot of people who face poverty, right? So for us, sticking, so you have like good balance between poverty line and then the really extremely rich people. So for us, I think our target audience was always right at the center. I'm not referring to the age, but I'm talking about the buying power. So the buying power in India, I think it was right at the center, maybe like a middle class or maybe like a low middle class, even that they could afford something like this. And, talk about the price point, right? So, it's something that nobody would think a lot about before buying, right? I think £500, I think 550, £600. Sometimes you can buy something which is worth about £400. So a lot of people are not going to think about it, right? It's not going to be difficult for a lot of people to think before buying it because of the usage that the product has. You're not buying it.
Even in India, I'm not sure if because I'm not sure of what the average sort of if in Indian wage may be, or how the conditions may be, or in comparison, as you mentioned. So if it's targeting, as you say, in India. So is there a specific target individual of groups that this of course this may be like, no, it's for everyone, but of course there is, I'm sure there is something in mind who can afford this sort of and who it would be valuable to as well in that way, because in a way, of course, everyone. But
so the target individual, I'll talk about age first. So if you see somebody riding a go-kart, or maybe not go-kart specifically, but let's say somebody who's riding a Segway or a scooter, I think somebody, so our demographics say that somebody right between the age of, I think, 17 to maybe 30, 34. That's the perfect age gap, right? 17 years, or maybe lower than 17, right about 34, 35 years of age, because that's when people are very young. They want to experiment. They want to do all sorts of things. But I think it's a very stereotypical thing to say, but I think as you grow older, people would want to do this, and it's something that nobody is accustomed to. So even if a 40-year-old or a 50-year-old wants to try it out, not a lot of people would want to even say that, because they would rather feel embarrassed. They would say that I've never seen somebody who has ridden a Segway, so why should I? But you have, so that's the reason we started off with a lot of influencers aged at that group. So we have a lot of influencers who are, middle-aged gentlemen, to whom they've been interested, and they have been, causing this, they've been creating this awareness about our products. But, that's the target age group. But if you look at the buying power, so I think in India, your average salary goes down to about what? I think £30,000, £40,000, that's the average, right? So, so you talk about the average, that's about it. So for somebody who is a 17-year-old, it usually comes from their parents, because a lot of young guys in India wouldn't earn that much. I think even until about 23, 24 years of age, a lot of people may not get access to 30,000, £40,000. So it's usually that family, although they might be earning a certain amount of it. But what we see is everybody earns way more than about £500. So, to buy a product, which is, so we obviously offer installments as well. So you can pay like monthly, you can break it down into monthly payments. But the buying power in India, as we see, so right from 17 to 34. So buying power would obviously fluctuate. So beyond 34, I think your buying power increases. So what we're seeing is 70 to 34, although it's our targeted age group, although we see that a lot of our audiences fit into that band, we see that the buying power is way higher beyond 34. But it's not like somebody can't afford it between 17 and 34 because, it's something that, and we envision ourselves in the future that, somebody above 34, we're going to create this awareness, we're going to spread it. And I think soon in the future, it's going to be very normal for somebody to use a Segway or a hoverboard or maybe like.
What do you think? What do you think would make because as you mentioned, it is something very new wavy in a way as well. New wavy, but also, I don't know, as you mentioned, someone that is 17 to wherever 20, as you mentioned, experimental, and it might not be as perhaps comfortable for someone as like older, maybe. I'm not sure. I'm just assuming. How could that be potentially targeting older individuals? Would you say?
So somebody, let's say our products are completely comfortable. So I mean, they come equipped with suspensions. They come with all sorts of things. But the reason why I feel we haven't impacted on a lot of higher age group of people, on an older age group of people, is only because it has never been done before in India. So understand, I think for a new concept to have its onset in a country where it has never been experimented, where people have only seen it on videos or on TVs, I think it's going to take a lot of time for somebody to accept and embrace this concept of electric micromobility. Even talk about electric vehicles also. A lot of people are skeptical, right? It's not that a lot of people don't want it. A lot of people want it. But what are they skeptical about? They're skeptical about the range, what they feel, what if they run out of battery in the middle of nowhere, where are they going to charge it? So there are a lot of factors because somebody who, although wants it, they'll not buy it, right? So we believe that a lot of people want to, but it's just a matter of having that first experience. And once you have the first experience, you definitely want to buy it because of the perks it offers, right? We have 60 kilometers of range, 30 kilometers of top speed, 30-40 kilometers. So it's a great thing to do, right? So when you buy it, you realize how effective it could be in your day-to-day lifestyle. So I think what's important for us right now is to get them to buy it, to get them to try it, right? And that's what we're doing. So as you spread awareness, as people use it, so I think a news, just like a news spreads like a wildfire, right? It's the same thing over here. Your experience is going to, spread. So our focus right now is to expand within India, have people use our products, have people test it out, a lot of.
But those individuals who are actually older as well, have them sort of. I'm not sure if there's sort of adverts created around this sort of where like fellow maybe you see an individual that is about 30 or whatever it may be. They're using this product and. It's more of a social thing, mindset of who uses it rather than the actual, which is interesting. Yeah, it's just of course. Why? It's like. Because you're also probably in a way, as you mentioned as well, the push to be like, why would I want to, as someone, I'm just trying to put myself in the mindset of someone that is 30. Why would I want to if I can, use a car? But then, as you mentioned, the argument is, if the car, the average speed of a car is like you're going less in that distance than you would be going on like an electric, so that could, I don't know, is that in a way the argument for as well to push over, be like, this is something worthwhile, because I actually don't see why, other than the social concept of using these vehicles that you're providing with the company, why it wouldn't be something that one would be interested in. Other than that, I don't see why other than it might have been that they wouldn't be interested.
It's exactly because of it's exactly because of the pros that we offer. Like you said, why would somebody be interested? Why would somebody want to do it? So understand, somebody who is above the age of 34, working individuals, obviously. Who are constantly having multiple responsibilities in life, being on time, saving space, saving fuel price. But as you start earning and as you start growing with your life, your career, you have responsibilities coming in. You have to manage your house. You have to manage a lot of things. While that could not be the most primary areas where we're targeting, but you see, somebody could save a lot when they're saving on fuel. Right, there's no maintenance cost involved here. You only buy the product once, you keep it with you, you just keep charging it, you keep using it. There's no fuel price involved, so no maintenance cost, no fuel cost, you're saving your time, and I think time is really important for a lot of people, right? Considering somebody who wants to reach a maybe 17-kilometer distance in 20 minutes or 17 minutes or 30 minutes, he's taking more than an hour. So he would want to use something like this, But how we see it as, obviously, the social awareness is more about, I think, young people using it, right? And as the vast majority of the population in India is young, we feel, they would sooner or later, very soon be as they are our target audience right now, they would very soon also become our target audience in the future, because a lot of people are growing, right, per se. So students, for example, there's a vast majority of students in India who would want to save on their time, who would want to get something like this, and they would want to buy something like this because it's convenient for them. Imagine, so in India, your public transports are usually crowded, right? You travel in a train, you travel in a bus. It's not as good as it is, in other parts of the world. Even in UK, I've been in UK. I see the bus conditions are really fine. They're really perfect. So you're sitting in a bus. I think it's completely all right to sit in a bus. But you see, if you've ever seen a bus condition or a railway condition in India, it's horrible. There are people hanging outside the railway line. They're somehow squeezing in.
Yeah.
So it basically deprives you of all the difficulty that you have to travel somewhere to save money. Right? If you have a car, you're going to have to constantly. So the fuel prices in India, for example, so close to about what? I think $10, maybe like $10 US, or maybe if I put it to pounds over here, it's going to be roughly about maybe a pound, greater than a pound. Right? I think it's a lot more cheaper than it is in the UK. But I think in India, if you look at that, people constantly keep filling. So that's per liter, a pound and a half per liter, right? So I think it goes to about, if you fill in about 6 liters, you fill in about 7 liters. How much ever it is, you usually goes to
per liter. Oh, pound per liter, do you say?
Pound per liter. So in India, for me, right? So if I have to fill in, I have to fill in. So I have a diesel 5 Series, so BMW 5 Series. So if I have to fill fuel in that, it's going to cost me anywhere in the vicinity of about 25 to 30 pounds, right? If I have to, so there's a Lamborghini, there's a Jaguar. So if I have to fill fuel in that, you have to spend anywhere about 50 pounds, 60 pounds, right? And these kind of cars consume a lot. So Lamborghini would give you roughly about, I think about, I'm not going to say it in gallon because I'm not really used to the units, but I'm going to say it in Indian units. So it's going to give you an average of about 5 kilometers per liter, right? So 5 kilometers or maybe 6 miles per liter, right? That's what it's going to give. So you can imagine how fast the fuel gets depleted and how frequently you would have to spend that 40 pounds, right? So your expenses of, if you're a regular user of a car, I'm not going to give you examples of these cars because out of experience, but I'm going to give you an example of a car that's affordable in a regular household. So
I was just going to say the regular Lamborghini,
I'm not going to give you examples of these cars, but I've had a regular car before as well. I've had a Ford Fiesta before this. I've had a Chevrolet Optra. So these regular cars, they would give me about 9 kilometers a liter or maybe 10 kilometers a liter at max, not more than that. Maybe 12 if you're traveling on a highway. But understand, somebody has a lot of up and down and a lot of frequent traveling to do. The rate at which the fuel gets depleted, because you need your AC air condition on, you need your aircon on. It's not as cold as it is in UK. It's very hot in India. Hot to mild. Right. So if you have your air conditioning, they constantly consume fuel. So the frequency at which people spend 30 pounds or 20 pounds, right? 40, 50 pounds is an example for supercars, but I'm saying about 20 pounds. Let's take it an average. So 20 pounds is the perfect figure. So the frequency at somebody who spends 20 pounds a month, right? You do the math. So if I spend 20 pounds, let's say 3 times a month, that's about 60 pounds a month, right? That's 60 pounds a month into 12 is, you can do, so it's 720 pounds, right? So what we are saying is save all that costs, right? On top of that, you have the car. So the car is going to cost you, a very affordable car in India is going to cost you about 10,000 pounds, 7 to 10,000 pounds, right? A very affordable car. So I'm saying you save all of that, right? Why do you want to spend all that? Why don't you get the instead, right? And if you have a car, which a lot of people do, just put this in your car. You're going to save yourself the fuel cost, right? You can park it up closer to your office space. Take this, go down. You can save yourself time. Time is the essence, right? So time is the essence to do whatever you want. You save up on time. It's like saving money, right? So it's convenient. You do not have to be always gathered, or you do not have to be always you do not have to be present within March traveling to the same place, because it's a very lethargic and a very tedious task to do. So every day you travel in a bus, you may travel in a train. It's a very tedious thing to do. Also, you might be sitting in a bus, sitting inside a train. Most of the time you stand inside a train. Although you do that, you're constantly surrounded by people pushing you left, right, and it's really difficult. The condition this way in India is not that good when it comes to public transport. So people who are, so a vast majority of the people use public transport, right? So, we look at the mass of people who are facing these inconveniences, and we take those inconveniences away from them by giving them something far more affordable, right? And very fortunately, in this band gap of people in the spectrum of people who face inconveniences of traveling on a daily, basis, we give them something more convenient, far more something affordable. And in this spectrum, you have a lot of young guys also. So young guys are supported and financed by their parents, because that's the thing in India. However, in the US, pretty much in the UK, people start earning at a very early stage. People would study, they would move out of their homes, they would start living in, settling in. They would maybe get engaged to somebody. They would get married at a very earlier stage. But in India, kids often stay with their parents for a really long time. They're financed by their parents, funded by their parents for a really long time, right? I would say roughly about 24, 25. A kid still, a guy or a girl is still at home usually, most of the times, until unless they go out to study. But most of the time in India, that's how the case is. So, because your parents are funding you, financing you, you could probably take a little less out of their wallets, and you could say that, listen, I want this. I don't want to spend a lot of money on cars and the transport. So all I'm saying is, you're helping in reducing their costs, cutting their time of travel or the time taken to reach a certain destination. You're helping them with convenience. You can carry them with you wherever you want to go. So that means and our ultimate goal, as you said earlier, that I was interested in cars, but how is this even relevant? So this industry, so being in this micromobility industry, as we scale, would give us potential and would give us impetus for growth in the automotive segment. Starting off solely in the automotive segment will not be feasible, considering you have a lot of costs that you have to incur. There are a lot of risks.
I was guessing this was exactly the question I mentioned. This is a potential future. I just want, if you don't mind, just asking in terms of safety of so usability of these vehicles. Is there a license involved, and also in terms of helmets or just in general commuting on roads, basically.
It's completely safe.
Well, I wanted to ask
it's completely safe, because you can use it on the pavement, you can use it on a footwalk, you can use it on the you do not have to be in the middle of the road surrounded by cars, constantly worried about someone's going to crash into you. You can use it on the corner of the roads, on the side of the roads.
There's lights on it as well. This vehicle,
there's all sorts of lights on it. It comes equipped with that. It comes equipped with a horn. You can integrate your phone with it. It has Bluetooth compatibility. You can monitor the speeds. If you want to go at a lower speed, you can set the benchmark. So you can do that on your phone. You can set a threshold value for speed. So your maximum speed is going to be within that limit, right? So you can do all sorts of these things, right? You can do all sorts of these things. You have a helmet that you can use. If you want, you can use your elbow pads. You can use knee pads. You can use all of that. But from what I can say, the standing position of the bike is completely fine. You can balance yourself damn well. The ground clearance also is very decent, so you do not have to worry about falling down. You're not going to fall down pretty easily, right? The braking conditions, you get disc brakes, they're perfect, right? They do not allow any sort of skidding or any sort of.
So there's a mechanical brake. It's a mechanical brake.
It's proper. So
interesting.
So it's a proper
interesting because I just wanted to add the bit, because that's quite a. I have one of the scooters outside I have, it's an electric one, and the braking, I'm not sure how it works, but I know it's not a when I'm braking, I think you could correct me how this works. I don't see any sort of mechanical aspects of it. I have to actually twist backwards, but it's reducing my speed electrically somehow. I think it's the feedback. I'm not sure how it works, to be honest.
I think most of the brakes are mechanically operated.
Right. Even in this.
Yeah, because braking is a mechanical operation. And every time you brake, what's happening is whenever you're braking your car, your discs are basically being held back by some sort of source that creates friction. And that's the reason today you have the concept of generating kinetic energy, charging your batteries every time your car brakes. So braking is a mechanical activity which produces a lot of energy through friction, right? So braking, I doubt, is electrical. Although I'm sure there would be forms of vehicles which produce electrical braking. But mechanical braking is the most accurate, because you have discs attached to the rear of the tire, and they actually hold on to it. You have you have the actuators also with the hydraulics which run to your wheels, and they brake your wheels for you. not discs, but I'm talking about proper normal braking that occurs. So you have these type of brakings as well. So it depends on which product you're buying. So we have a product which is called the F series. The F series would have mechanical braking in the rear as well as at the front. We have a G30, which is slightly on the more expensive side, which has mechanical braking on both sides. It's not disc, but it's proper mechanical braking. Usually, I feel mechanical braking is braking is a mechanical process, because you may have an electrical activity, like you may do it at the press of a button, maybe, which could pause your brakes. But how does braking work is your wheels are basically being held back, right? They're not allowed to move. So if your wheels are being held back, your speedometer automatically reduces the speed at which you're traveling. So the speed is being obviously portrayed to you or displayed to you in a digital format. Whenever you're braking, obviously your wheels slow down, hence reducing the speed. That's how it is. So the usability of our products is very wide. You can use it in all sorts of terrains and surfaces. It's not difficult at all. People who want to have some fun, they can use it. People who want to just commute, they can use it. So, but obviously, micro-mobility. I'm not asking somebody to travel maybe 20 miles with this. Although it has the range, it's meant for, intercommute or inter-vicinity transport, so you can, get things quick. You can get to do your things quick, which is something I feel India is leaning towards, because tomorrow we're going to have infrastructure almost in every part of the place. So transport to certain places is not going to be really expensive or really going to be time-taking. So if you've got a short distance to cover, taking your car out, to traveling in your car could be a very tedious thing to do, right? It could be a very time-taking or tiring thing to do. So this is an alternative, right? This is a great alternative. And even if you have to let's say go long distances, you can easily do that, because you have your it has the range, you have the charge, you can just go. You can charge it normally.
How far can it go?
So it depends.
I was going to say, how far can it go?
Our best has a range of 65 kilometers. Our best has a range of
for how long?
65 kilometers is roughly about 64 miles, 64 miles, which is pretty long.
Right.
64 miles.
That's with full charge.
Yeah, that's full charge.
And if you were to go max speed, for example,
that's what it is calculated on. So full charge.
Oh, okay, that's it. Okay,
is 65 kilometers. It's the range. So
and how long does it take? I don't know if you mentioned the full charge.
Full charge is going to take you about 45 minutes to an hour. So
45 minutes an hour. Okay.
Almost 45 to 60 minutes is the full charge.
Right.
So the reason being, it could take a lot lesser, and it's not always that somebody is going to travel 65 kilometers at one go, 64 miles at one go. People will often travel 20 miles at one go. That's going to deplete about 20% or 25% of your vehicle battery, not more than that. But it's just like, so to refill, I think 20-25% is going to take you about 10-15 minutes, right? 20 minutes, not more than that. But how it works is, the charging infrastructure is something that everybody globally is currently struggling with. So if you talk, not struggling, I would say per se, I think to create a very affordable charging system. So if you talk about really expensive cars like the Mercedes EQS or the BMW i3, the M3i, right? So these cars in India, they would cost you anywhere upwards of 100,000 pounds. Okay, these cars in India, way above 100,000 pounds, 140,000, 120,000, very expensive. Not completely not into the affordable criteria, right? So these cars, they can charge in about 20 minutes. Now the chargers developed for these cars are really high power, and they are really it's a really cost intensive thing to do, because these chargers are expensive. You could not possibly charge a 10 or a 20,000 pound electric vehicle that fast. So if you're leaning towards affordability, I think the technology the technology is not so developed to give you a really fast charging at that price band. I think it will soon. Obviously, it's possible with time. It's something that will soon do. But the technology to instantly charge your car battery or a vehicle or a bike battery, I think for that to develop on a general scale for everybody is going to take maybe a little time, right? Because it's something that everybody has just started. So, imagine even phones used to take a lot of time to charge, right? Phones used to take back in, I think phones would take about 30 minutes to an hour, even more than an hour to charge. But today phones, fast charging came in after so long that today phones are getting charged in roughly about 15 minutes or 20 minutes of time, right? A full charge. So that's so if it's taken so much long for a phone, like a small, I think what, milliampere, I think 3000 mAh, 2700 mAh batteries take that long. Today it's 5000 mAh, I think max, or maybe 5500 mAh for a phone battery.
MAH, so milliamps per hour.
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying.
So to charge something that's small in a really large, in a short span of time, that to a wall-mounted charging socket, I think it's going to take 20-25 minutes. So if a phone is going to take that much, you think about the battery capacity in a bike or a car. Car, we're talking about kilowatts, which is huge, right? So in a bike also, we're talking about kilowatts. Maybe even if you say watts, like maybe 800 watts or 650 watts, that's huge power capacity, right? So to charge that much completely in a very short span of time, the fast charging infrastructure for that, I think it needs to get developed upon, and it's not. I mean, no companies yet there now. But if you talk about if you have the capacity to spend that much, if you have the capacity to, let's say, given that much of maybe capital and advance your technology, you possibly can.
Right. I also wanted to ask about maintenance of the vehicle as well. So is that done in-house? Oh, no, or in terms of service?
So you don't have to worry about maintenance. So the customer doesn't have to be, there is no maintenance required. However, since although there is no maintenance required, we have a dedicated maintenance team. Somebody who's going to give you these checks. So if you have, after sales is really important for us, like I said. So after you buy the stuff, if you face any sort of difficulties, if you face any sort of problems, because we're not saying it's like 100% perfect. Something can happen at times. You could tend to damage the product. Do something, which is completely fine. So human error is possible. Electrical error is always possible, right? Because it's an electrical appliance at the end of the day. So these glitches are always possible. So for that, we have a completely dedicated maintenance team. So if there's any problem locally, we can locally come in and assist you, right? So we can come to your place, have you assisted. But if you're at a further geographical distance, then we can have somebody. Perhaps we get you on a call, maybe on a video call. We can help you, assist you with it. Or if we have somebody maybe at that area or that side of the region, we can have them, come over to your place. But connectivity with the company is something that we don't want the customers to lose after they've bought the product. So we really focus on maintaining the relationship with the customer even after they buy the product, because it's important that their experience is, hassle-free and seamless for the years to come. That's really important for us. So the customer, because they too, so 500 pounds or 600 pounds maybe in the affordable segment, but for somebody to spend 500-600 pounds on a bike, even it's obviously some amount of money for them as well. So we value every penny that a customer spends, and we can assure and guarantee there's no servicing or maintenance that's required after you buy the product.
It's a sort of attachment as well. So as you mentioned, the after product has been sold. Is there sort of attachments that you can buy with the product as well to enhance experience?
Attachments, talk about maybe. So we are soon getting into personalization and customization. We're going to do that for the customers, because I think people would like to personalize their items for themselves. Personalization is a very big thing. So of lately, people have personalization. If you have the ability to do that, people would love it, which is something that we are clearly leaning towards. It comes with a digital instrument cluster, which is compatible with your phone. So I think even while you're riding, you can listen to music, you can do a lot of things, right? You get the helmet. We have basic merchandise and accessories. And we are soon getting into making your knee pads. We're getting into all these things, right? The external aspects of it.
Right.
But if you talk about, like, let's say, for example, the go-karts, right? The go-karts are a very interesting thing, I would say. So the go-kart Pro, so there are two go-karts. There is a go-kart and a go-kart Pro.
Okay.
The go-kart Pro comes with a complete unit, right? It's a complete go-kart that's sold to you. Right, you buy it, you use it. However, there's the regular go-kart, which is comprised of. It's a very interesting thing. So a go-kart obviously has 4 wheels. So a regular go-kart. So we believe our go-kart should be able to drift, because that's a very fun thing for somebody to do. If you're riding a go-kart, you obviously want to be able to drift. You want to have the fun attributes. Just because
is that down to how the wheel spins?
What we have is. The rear wheels of the go-kart is something that we've made sure are big. The front wheels could not be as big. And what we've done is the rear wheel, the entire rear wheel attachment, is a completely other Segway, if you know what I mean. So you've seen the hoverboard on which you stand and self-balancing. So we sell the go-kart kit, right? We sell the hoverboard. You attach those two to make a go-kart, right? If you don't want to use a go-kart, you can simply take the rear wheels off, which convert into a hoverboard, and you can use them simply just the way it is, right? So it's like telling you. So if you just want to imagine it, right? If you just want to imagine what I'm saying, think about a normal car. You're driving a normal car. tomorrow you don't feel like driving the car, what you can do is you can take the rear two wheels off, you can convert it into a bicycle, and you can use it. Just a very just to help you create a picture, right? So over here, what we're doing is you've seen a hoverboard, the two wheels parallelly on which you balance. You've seen the hoverboard. The hoverboard fits onto the go-kart to make it a complete go-kart with four wheels. If you don't want to use the go-kart at any given point in time, you can just remove the hoverboard from the back, use the hoverboard exclusively by itself, keep the go-kart just the way it is. So that's something that we've done as well. So if you're buying the go-kart, yeah, if it's not just that you're buying something on four wheels, you can also take it off and use it casually on the road. So that's also
that's awesome because it's giving something to the customer, as you said, the personalization aspect of it, the connection that you can build with the brand as well. You know, this is the brand that does this. Yeah, I also wanted to have a interesting sort of your opinion on the other side of this side. So I think I've heard the argument of, other than electric, I think it's hydrogen that there's some people are interested in.
You have.
What is your opinion?
You have hydrogen.
Oh, of course, other aspects.
You have
hydrogen.
People talk about methanol. People talk about. See, to be very honest, we are currently working on petrol and diesel, right? So fossil fuels.
Yes.
We have noticed this jump from IC to hybrid electric vehicles to electric vehicles, right? Or to IC, internal combustion.
Okay.
Cars, right? So the basic engine-driven cars. So from internal combustion to we've gone to plug-in hybrids or hybrid electric vehicles, PHEVs or HEVs, to electric vehicles, right? Now if you see the transition here, what I feel is there is. I don't know. I mean, it's my personal belief. I could be wrong here, but what I feel is it's going to be a transition which is not going to involve a vast majority of any other fossil fuel or other fuel types. So because what's going to happen is your petrol and diesel exist. Plug-in hybrids were a very smooth transition because people were trying to instill the concept of battery-driven cars. So they made it plug-in hybrids or hybrid electric vehicles where you have fuel reserve as well as you have power reserve, and power reserve constantly keeps backing itself up through the braking of the tires, of the wheels. And now you have completely electric vehicles, because a lot of companies have done it, right? So it's not a difficult, mystery to solve, or it's not a tough nut to crack. People have done it. Companies are doing it, right? I feel it's going to happen that way. There are going to be very few companies that are going to ever rely on maybe hydrogen or something like that. It's a concept that is talked about, but I don't see how it is. I don't see how it can be feasible, right? Because hydrogen as well is a very flammable substance. So it's a little hazardous. I mean, I'm not saying it. Using hydrogen is going to be risky. I'm not saying that cars are not going to be designed for it. You can have cars designed for it to contain the fuel, to use it in a way where obviously all risks are avoided. But it's something that not a lot of people do, because see, infrastructure needed for electric vehicles, right? If I talk about India, because I see there's a huge potential India has in terms of growth in the next decade, right? So India is going to be like a very top economy. Right now, it's the fourth largest economy in the world. So I feel, so right now we are having a shift from, paradigm shift from IC, internal combustion, to electric. What's more, the most important thing right now is to build and maintain an electric vehicle infrastructure, charging infrastructure for the vehicle. So everybody or every entity today, be it the government, be it people, be it organizations, are going to divert all their funds towards making electric infrastructures, because also in terms of business it's profitable, and at the same time it's needed, it's required, right? So you may have plants that are generating electricity, right, based out of fossil fuels. You may have fossil fuels that are being combusted to generate electricity, but most of it's going to be the center of the point of focus is going to be to make electric vehicle infrastructure all around the world, so that it's, driving an electric vehicle is not as, people are not skeptical about driving an EV, because people are not, because, people today are skeptical about it, and they're not skeptical about a normal car, because, you have a gas station anywhere. You can have a gas station in any corner of this world. It's not like you're going to be deserted, right, for miles. So the current focus should be for every industry to maintain an electric vehicle charging infrastructure. So when all of the attention is there, all of the focus is there, and that is something that needs to be built at its earliest. Because see, companies will make up electric vehicles, but there'll be a big delay. If you remember the last time I told you, there'll be a very big delay, because today if I may have 10% or 20% of India's population running on electric vehicles, I would say that where the charging infrastructure, right? So there will be a big problem. So it's a very big problem to solve that while the electric vehicles growth is being seen, at the same time the infrastructure growth also has to be seen. Otherwise, if the infrastructure develops at a later stage, there'll be a very big delay. So while most of the attention, most of the focus lies there, I honestly doubt that any other compound or fossil fuel is going to pave its way in, because then that is another ball game. You will have to have cars designed for that. You will have to have different infrastructure for that, and I don't think a lot of people will be willing to do that, considering electric vehicle is the way to go right now.
Yes, and it's also it's a different problem as well, wouldn't you say, with the I was just thinking, as you mentioned as well, but the charging for an electric bike and for the car is also very different. I think I'm assuming that the charging I suppose the power supply, I suppose, for these electric vehicles can be plugged into any mains, and it could be
so the electric bikes you can do that anywhere. So you can do that at your home, you can do it next to your table, you can do it anywhere. So electric bikes,
that's whereas these I don't know these vehicles, you have to have the actual point, the charging points, that you have to have a set point where it's fixed. Basically, it's not dynamic.
It's a lot more complicated for cars. And that's the reason there's another solution that a lot of car makers are doing right now. They're trying to make cars with batteries which are removable. So let's say, for example, so if you have a car and you can remove the batteries, what you would do is, there are businesses which run on the basis of rentals. You would go to the stop, you would remove the batteries from your car, and you would keep those batteries there. And you would rent out another set of batteries, put it in your car, and take it to wherever you are. And then whenever that battery drains out, you do the same thing. In the meantime, the batteries that you had removed and kept at the station, that gets charged for somebody else to use. So this circulation of batteries via removable car battery system, I think that's also going to come because of the complexity of charging a car again and again. And let's say tomorrow a battery faces some fatal failure, some serious issues. It's important to be able to reach out to the battery. The battery needs to be accessible, right? Because that's the heart of the vehicle. That's the main power source. Something happens to the battery, you need to be able to reach out to it. So even for bikes, making bikes which have removable batteries is going to be very easy, because something goes wrong, you remove it. And so there are business models based on this, where you can outsource, let's say, with a battery manufacturer, right? After you outsource with a battery, you partner with an outsourcing. You have an outsourcing partner. You get those batteries. You run a rental. You basically allow people to rent out the batteries, right? And then you take a certain fee from them. They pay you. I feel it's one of the most feasible things in terms of financial handling, because I don't think a lot of people are going to face battery issues inside cars which are running on so big batteries. It's not going to happen. Or bikes, not a lot of people are going to face it. So it's going to be I think it's going to be very capital intensive. But I think I see that how it is convenient for certain customers, but I don't see how it is beneficial in terms of business models.
Because as you mentioned, these batteries are actually they physically take up a space, and how many cars are coming, and also maintenance of these cars, the batteries of the physical space. I don't know what the performance of the batteries are. I don't know in terms of temperature, how it affects, how it can maintain if it's left for X amount of time there, and also to be charged, of course, the performance, and then where it could be where it goes after as well, the sustainability of those batteries as well, as once it's reached its peak point where it's not able to maintain any more of those the actual I guess you say it's a rubber current.
So this concept, I'll tell you, there are two ways to look at this. The concept of removable batteries. I think it'll work better for bikes, scooters, because it's really easy to remove a battery in a bike or a scooter. It'll probably, a battery might be maybe this is a tissue roll, maybe 3-4 times the size of this in a cylindrical format. I'm saying a battery could be, if you don't roll, so you can just remove it. So what I'm trying to say is, a car, I'm not sure how it would be, because a car it requires a lot of space to house that much amount of battery. That powerful battery. It's not really easy to remove the batteries every time in a car, but talk about a bike or a scooter, it's very much doable because it would be so instead of charging your bike every time for 40 minutes, right, or maybe 30 minutes, what you can do is you take your bike, pull up at the station, remove the batteries from your bike, put it there, tap your card, pay a certain amount of fees, take the batteries from the station, new batteries, put it in your bike, and you're on your way. You don't have to spend a lot of time charging. So it helps you with it cuts you down on your charging time, right? And at the same time, it's cost effective as in, people would do that. If people have the option of replacing batteries more than charging them for 40 minutes, people would rather, replace them. So it's doable for, let's say, smaller vehicles. That's a concept that is much more feasible for smaller vehicles, considering it's doable and you can do it single-handedly. You would not need extra man-force for that. And as far as, honestly speaking, as far as the performance of battery goes based on the storage conditions, I think that'll be fine. You can basically you have car batteries that are kept on the outside, which eventually go into your car. The power is electrical. So a battery is not going to, I think, affect, at least for something like a scooter or a bike, the performance is not going to be that much of a factor to be looked upon. So if you have a battery, for a car, for a bike or a scooter, I think it's going to be perfectly fine. There's going to be no problem.
That's interesting as well, because now I think of this emission storage of, but also the operation of these in different temperatures. As this is in India, the heat is, it's encountering that. But once it's perhaps in an operation in which is unlikely, I assume, but Russia, for example, the cold, the really cold, and that affecting of the movement of, I suppose, the electrons and that sort of thing as well. On the different conditions, there's an upper lower limit of that probably as well.
You would have storage facilities. I think if somebody is initiating a business idea as such, they're obviously gonna think of a way to store the batteries, a way to make sure that they are perfectly in space and they are.
But even in using it in different like cold temperatures and actually starting the battery up, or starting the vehicle up, and start moving from 0 to X speed from the battery in that cold temperature. I don't know if
I doubt that's going to have any problem, considering these batteries are well insulated and thermally insulated. So I doubt you would have any sort of problem, because the battery is also developed in that way. It's not going to be any sort of a battery, right? So it'll be a well insulated battery. And at the same time, I feel if you ever have that problem, all you need to do is you keep your bike running for a few seconds. I think few minutes you can just start it and you can just keep it on for it to eventually cool down and generate some sort of heat for itself to work. But I don't see the temperature being a massive problem when it comes to storing these batteries and making them operational.
Yeah. Okay, I'll have if you don't mind, just 2 more questions actually. Please. And this is going to be actually, let me have a look what might be an interesting, because it's more, these questions are going to be more philosophical in a way, I guess.
I love philosophical questions. I'm completely fine. You mind if I drink some water? I'll just...
Brilliant. Yeah, no worries, of course. I guess the question would be, what advice would you have? I guess the question will be, what advice would you have for aspiring engineers, like, for example, young individuals that are like myself and us in a way as well, but at a different point in your journey? You're a postgrad currently. I'm an undergrad. I'm currently dealing with some of the
right question. I'm really sorry, but I know what you're asking.
Yeah,
and
of course.
Answer this. Engineering. So your studies, right? Eventually, I feel some way in life they do help you with your journey, right? Even though you're an entrepreneur, they do teach you a lot of things.
Yes.
If you look at it straight, you might find no correlation between what you've studied and what you've done, because you might have studied something about business versus been something else. But how it really helps is, I've seen this way. Yes, if you ask me, has it helped you in your entrepreneurial journey? To some extent, right? Because I've done signal processing, I've done communications. My businesses, my interests are completely as being a part of different businesses is completely different. My roles in the organization are completely different. So how do I have a different role while I've studied something else? You may ask again. It's a matter of diversity. If you're interested in business, you might end up doing business. You might do that well. Although you have a technical background, you would do justice to both. Right? But for aspiring engineers, I can see doing engineering has a lot of perks. I have felt that as an engineer, it has helped me a lot with my thinking. So, engineers are very analytical when it comes to thinking. And having an analytical mindset is really important because thinking about a problem or thinking about whatever is in existence today and solving it, it's not just about the thought that goes into it, it's about analyzing it, right? There are a lot of factors which are involved that influence your decisions. A lot of things. And so if you're at the helm of a very big organization, at the helm of the managing director, at the managing board of a very big organization, you must be responsible for a array of tasks, right? You might have never even thought of. So it requires a lot of processing and analyzing of information at every level. And so breaking down of information, analyzing it, producing a solution, right? Because that's what you are the people look up to you in an organization because you're the head of it. So you need to be able to give direction to people at different levels by having the diversity to do so, right? Of analytical thinking. So I think for aspiring engineers, right, what I would say is analyze different problems, right? Because engineers have this, I feel, again, when I'm saying this, I'm not implying anything on the converse to other fields. Every other degree or every other course of study, whatever you're interested in, you should do. If you're interested in pursuing law, you should do it. It's a great field, I haven't, but I'm talking about my experience as an engineer. So I'm not implying the converse for any other field, but I feel engineers have this beautiful ability to decode what's given to them, if any piece of information, and they have this amazing ability to instantly understand and form a solution, and the adaptability of learning something. I think because engineers, we as engineers, we learn multiple subjects, multiple modules, multiple things, and it requires a lot of analyzing of information, right? But vast piece of information given to us, we learn it, we think, we devise a solution, break down whatever is given, find an answer, right? So I think for aspiring engineers, I would say that continue doing that, right? If you're aspiring to be an engineer, it's a great thing because you are basically working towards making yourself a much more analytical and a practical person, right? Which is really important in today's world because I see, I think if you're practical in every aspect of life, right, then you would be able to devise a solution for yourself. You wouldn't have to rely on somebody because see, having an emotional quotient is fine. Everybody has emotions, but if your emotions are influencing your decisions in life, I don't think you would often end up at the right spot. So being practical is really important because life is filled with ups and downs, right? So if you're extremely ecstatic at your ups and you're extremely low at your downs, these emotions are going to influence your decisions. So eventually you might end up doing something wrong. So I think engineers that way are very practical. They're very analytical. They think about, if you tell them something, they will analyze, whatever piece of information is given to them. They would find all possible outcomes of it, and they would say what could be the best possible outcome. I think that's a skill that engineers eventually develop over the period of time by learning so many, a diverse range of things. So if you're doing engineering, if you're an aspiring engineer, right, you should go for it because you should choose your field wisely. You should see whatever you're interested in, and it's good. So you should not look at engineering as a very tedious thing. So I have a little sister, so she looks at it as a very tedious thing to do. So she gets very scared or rather bothered when she looks at so many calculations that I do. But it's not really about it often is very deceiving. Engineering is not a field that could be very harassing or very torturing because if it gives you the ability to learn about something much more in depth. So you should have the interest to decipher what lies beyond these machines, this iPad that I'm using, this watch that I'm wearing. What goes into making these things, right? I'm using this iPad to talk to you. So, but what's there inside? What's allowing this seamless flow of communication, right? So, the curiosity to unravel this technique and tomorrow and see. Why do I say engineering? Is because see, tomorrow there are going to be two types of businesses. Either it's going to be a technology business or it's going to be a technology enabled business, right? Tomorrow, whatever business is there, either it will be tech, maybe like a software company, or it will be tech enabled. So if it's a banking company, it will be a fintech. Or today, almost every banking company is a fintech company. Back in the day, you had to go to the banks to verify yourself. Today, you can do it at home. Everything is going to be run on tech, right? So considering the future is completely leaning towards technology, right? Engineering is going to help you far more in terms of your thinking, in terms of your understanding of different varieties of concepts.
And even when we mentioned the influence of products and technology on on the influence of mindset as well, not just mindset, but the paradigm shift you mentioned as well of people's in general in each country in the world, I suppose, of that product that is influencing that, even if it's a variation of a product, how it can affect the mindset and the way people think about it, of different things. It's really powerful, and I think it's a lot, I think, which is great that you mentioned, a lot bigger than the idea of just the usage of the product as well. It's also the interaction and the connection that one has with the product as well. I think it also reflects a way, products can also reflect mindset and the mindset and also society, I think. And on another level of abstraction, I think it also reflects the way that we think of problems, the way that we think of solving problems as well, which is really interesting. The diverse thinking in engineering is so vital, I think. From different it's really interesting.
And people somehow, I feel everybody notices, everybody faces this at some point in their life, but nobody notices it, right? So today you may talk about maybe a mother who's working as a housewife, and today let's say she's using maybe like an iPad or maybe a MacBook or an iPhone to talk to her son or daughter who's staying miles away from her. But she may not, she's actually going through the experience of enjoying that conversation because of the problem. But she may not have ever realized that why it's enabling me to do it. So, but if you ask that question, she would realize that, okay, she would be rather more curious that, I would love to know what's going behind this, what's enabling this experience. So everybody undergoes, everybody goes through this technological advancement. Everybody enjoys this experience, has this experience of witnessing how technology can change your life in various different ways. But a lot of people don't actually realize it. So, but if you're an engineer, I think your approach towards tech is not about always the usage. Your approach towards tech is how it can be engineered better. So that's and I quote, this is what Henry Royce said, the owner of Rolls Royce. You take something that is the best and you make it better, right? So as an engineer, I have not always thought of, okay, this is an iPad, it's great, but I've always thought of, it's what's in it and how it can be engineered to be better. That's what. So innovation is really engineers are really innovative. So if I were to put the word, so for somebody who's an aspiring engineer or who's in this line, I think you are helping yourself by being innovative, right? It may not necessarily have to do with the business that you're in. Tomorrow you may have a startup. It may be a laundry startup. It may be a business which deals with clothes or maybe e-commerce. But being an engineer, it doesn't necessarily imply that whatever you've learned is going to be put to use. Being an engineer is going to definitely, but it's definitely going to imply that your creativity towards thinking, your innovation is always going to be at a wider scale. So no matter what line of business or what you do tomorrow in life, no matter how different they are from each other or how discrete they are, your I think process of thinking is going to be creative, it's going to be innovative, and your the speed at which you're going to decipher a problem and find a solution, the right one, is going to be much higher. So that's what I feel. That's what I feel how engineering has impacted me and my fellow engineers that I've ever come across. I know my friend who studied in a very prestigious university. One of my cousins has done his master's in MIT. So I see how they think, how they approach different things. They're very practical, very creative, very innovative. I think these skill sets are really important to somebody to have, because you can then apply it to anything, right? You can apply that to anything. It's not necessarily got to do with tech, right? Today you can see a mechanical problem, you could just think of it in a way and you could find out a solution. So I think engineering is not necessarily always means, it does not necessarily always implies that you will be related to tech. Tomorrow you could branch out into something else. But what's surprising is, being an engineer, you might as well you might do it better as well than anybody else.
It's interesting that you mentioned I've seen some practical, of course, engineering is all about practicality, but in terms of in my personal life, dealing with any sort of issue that may come into hand in terms of planning, for example, there's I need to get to A to B as well from on the train, for example, and I'm noticing how I can think of this I should say the minimum amount of input or effort I want to. What's the objective? I want to be able to get the. It's how can I get that the fastest as well with the least output, for example, of energy, for example. It's really interesting to think about it that way as well, because it helps me get to just that way, or even just giving information from, let's say, all of these numerous amount of things that may seem like unrelated problems, unrelated things that to look at this and decipher and see the patterns, how they're related to with one another, and actually come to a solution that is aligned with the objective, ideally, which is how I define the of course the ideal solution, and that allows me to get from A to B once again on the train, and that is related to whatever it may be. What am I doing? So it's very very practical, very very useful, and that's really what I was interested in hearing from yourself. So so that's quite interesting. I mean, I don't really have, in terms of one more questions, because
no, I don't mind at all. Whatever number of questions.
So what do you think? Because of course, once again, the bigger picture, and I noticed the patterns in these founders who are have the background of tech, and it seems to be what I noticed from myself is it's great to have this reward system of I solved this problem just in school, just in maths, for example, and it's like that makes me feel amazing to understand. And but then the bigger thing is with the engineering stuff that I noticed that I get fulfillment out of is actually seeing the result of something make something for someone easier. And I would like to ask, just starting from far away, the question is, what is your meaning of I guess to make it broad, what is your meaning in your career, maybe let's keep how do you define meaning? So let's say, what is your meaning, rather than going into my bias of what is the meaning in your career, what does it mean? Because
I asked, so what's the purpose of my existence? What you're asking?
Well, in a very easy question, yes. What is your purpose of existence?
I understand. So. I will tell you what motivates me to, go forward in life, right? So, again, factors like a fancy lifestyle or anything, it's a good thing to have, but that's not the end game, right? So everybody at this, and I feel a vast majority of people today are motivated to have startups, are motivated to do something because they look at the flamboyant attributes, because they feel that tomorrow if I have a business, if I have a startup, I'll be able to have a lifestyle and so on. So might as well do it. The purpose of doing it for a lot of people is very different, right? Only a few people believe in the purpose of doing a business or running an organization or having a startup. The purpose of it is to actually, like I said, help the community, help the people of this world on a large scale. When you do that, when you focus on doing that, when you focus on excelling at your services that you offer to the people, I think the byproduct of your, the byproduct that you look at, your money, your lifestyle, it all just happens automatically, right? It works in sync.
Yeah.
So if you ask me what keeps me driving, I fundamentally believe that everybody has a purpose of their existence, but it's up to you to decide what you want in life, right? Nobody decides.
And that shifts as well, of course. Of course, that shifts.
So nobody decides it for you. Nobody asks you to. So you have to decide what do you want to do in life, right? Now, for somebody like me, my fascination comes from cars. There is obviously at some point in life you'll be fascinated towards something. You would never, thinking about what it can give you is not the right thing. So what you get from it is not what you have to think. You have to see what other people get from what you've done, right? So I think it's the simple fundamental rule of how you're helping the people of this world, and I have believed in that. So today I would be very happy if I bought a Lamborghini. I'd be very happy that I'd drive one. I would be very happy that I'd buy a watch, an expensive watch. But what would give me one happiness, which is priceless, is helping somebody. If I probably help the homeless person, that's that's actually happiness, right? Helping my own mom and something, I feel happy. So I think what keeps you happy in life, right? See, because I feel happiness is really important. So we do not need to be pressurized by this burden of doing something, accomplishing something. So if you're doing something that keeps you happy, right? I think your chances of excelling at that, and you need to do something to excel at. You don't need to do something to make a living, right? There's a difference between making a living and having a lifestyle, right? You need to do something to that you're happy at, that you keep excelling at. You would excel at, right? So your purpose doesn't have to be money. Your purpose doesn't have to be house. Your purpose doesn't have to be buying a watch, buying a cool car. That should not be the purpose. Those are byproducts of how well you excel at something you do and how happy you are while doing it. Because then if you're not happy, you would constantly, you would rattle about, you would rant about it. You would never be happy doing it. So, I think mental peace and physical peace is a really important thing in life. I think when you're mentally at peace, you're physically at peace with yourself. So being at peace with yourself is really important, right? So how do you be at peace with yourself? So if you ask me my objective, my objective is to, I understand, I want to be happy and everything, but what gives me happiness? Ultimate source of happiness, right? It can, happiness comes from within, right? It cannot possibly depend on desirable substances or materialistic substances, right? Attributes. So happiness is, your source of happiness. I want to be happy in life. What makes me happy? Helping other people, maybe finding ways to solve problems makes me happy.
When you're doing something that aligns with you and your goals, when you like doing, when you're doing,
like I said, I have goals. I want a car. I want this car. I want a house. I want to have these many millions of dollars tomorrow in my account. I have a goal. But understand, if I just keep looking at the goal, and if I just keep saying, I want this, it's never going to happen. There's a process, right? If I want an apple juice, if I keep staring at an apple thinking that I wish I had apple juice, I'll never get apple juice. I'll have to go cut the apple, grind it. There's a process. So everything you do, you'll have to put in efforts for it, right? So my ultimate objective, my fascination began from cars. When I used to see a car, it was not just the fancy car that caught my attention. I used to be in my regular car also. I used to see what this button does, what that button does. So it was my interest in the entire machine itself, which led me to do
like a spaceship.
Yeah. So it's just that
ultimately it's like a spaceship.
I used to feel happy. I used to feel that I understood what this is for. So when I sit in a car, it's not just about it's a fancy car, it's a small car, it's a low rider. No, it's about the attributes. Now, obviously, your career and your life, right? So it's like people often separate those two. But I think your career, what you do in life, what your entire life about yourself, it eventually includes. So when you are working for yourself, I think that you align yourself with your career, right? You are happy, you're doing what you want to do. But when you are under the constant pressure to impress other people, when you are under the constant pressure to make a lifestyle just because you think it's happy to get you the attention, that's not, you're not living for yourself. You need to learn to live for yourself. You need to learn to love yourself first. You need to learn to live for yourself first. You need to understand. So when you know what you want in life and when you pursue those things in life, right, then you're on the right path. You know that it's making you happy. Right, your ultimate goal should not be perfection. You can never be perfect. You can constantly practice that makes you like that. But your ultimate goal should be perfection, satisfaction of other people, or carrying a status. That's not important. What's important is you are at your peace with yourself to be able to do what you love. Right? I love the idea of business is something that I love. I love understanding problems. So every time I look at something, I see if it's a problem, how can I solve it? So if I'm walking on the streets, so in the UK, there was the first thing I ever noticed when I came to UK was maybe the cost of labor over here is really high. However, the cost of labor in India is going to be very low. If I order cheeseburger over here, it's going to cost me about £10. In India, if I did the same, it would be costing me £1.52, right? That's the difference. Only because the delivery charges are £5. So I instantly thought that what if I implement an idea where I could have things delivered to people's houses at a cheaper rate. I could do something which more cost. So your constant urge to innovate, it keeps me going. So I constantly feel like, what's that thing? And to be very honest, I agree, you can have goals. You want to have this car, you want to have that car, you want to have this house, materialistic attributes, having, everybody has unlimited desires to fulfill, and you should. I feel you should. It's something that you should, aim for those things in life. You should wish for things.
Keep reaching, but never truly obtain really because once it's the paradox of obtaining something and then feeling like I've checked the what's next. It's always the what's next that I think working towards something.
What's the what's next? So it's it always keeps you. So today you want a Lamborghini, you'll get a Lamborghini. Tomorrow you want a yacht, you'll get a yacht. Tomorrow you'll say I want a private jet, you'll get that. But at one point you will be done with all of these things. So what's going to keep you pushing forward? So you need a much more permanent and a much more ultimate goal in life, so that you can attain all of these things, right? So I completely admire somebody who's ambitious. I'm extremely ambitious, right? I like wearing a good watch. I like having a fancy car. I love having a fancy house. I'm extremely ambitious, and I continue doing so. And tomorrow I want to continue with these things. And I urge people that you should be ambitious in life. You should never preach, or you should never be satisfied with where you are. You should always aim to do more, right? So tomorrow you make it to a yacht, you should aim for a private jet. I'm not saying no. Your ambition, you're going.
Do you reckon you truly feel like to process the info. It's like you should never be. Did you say you feel like you should never be satisfied where
you should never be.
Because in that way. But how do you feel content with with where you are in a way as well?
So there's a difference between satisfaction and gratefulness. So I'm grateful for where I am today, right? I'm constantly grateful. I'm happy that I got to see this today, because I don't know whether or not I'll be living to see tomorrow. Anything can happen, right? So I'm grateful for every day, every time I see the sunrise, right? I'm grateful. But when I'm saying you're not satisfied, it doesn't mean that you're unhappy. You can be happy, but you cannot. So when I say you're not satisfied, you just mean that you're not finished, right? When you say that you're not satisfied, you just mean that you're not finished. There is a long way to go. So the process of learning, the process of implementing, it's a perpetual process. It never ends. So your process of learning continues till you die. Till you die, you continually learn about different things. So what is that thing that you want to learn about, and what is that thing that you want to help people with, right? So when I learn about a problem, I learn about a solution, I'm helping people with that, right? That keeps me going, right? And at the same time, I know that, I have these desires to fulfill. So what next? I don't live to fulfill these materialistic desires. I live to fulfill the ultimate purpose. And in the process of fulfilling your ultimate process, in the process of following your ultimate process, you can fulfill these desires. And these desires can keep having their benchmarks. Tomorrow you might aim for a Mercedes Benz. Tomorrow you will say, I want a Lambo. Tomorrow you will say, I want a Ferrari. Tomorrow you will say, I want a Rolls Royce. It should keep going. I'm not saying no. But your process is really important. What's the process? The process is you pursue the path that allows you to help people, that allows you to serve people, in various different ways, right? So when you do that, right, because every business is a service to people. Every business it is, right? Every business is, customers. So today, Ratan Tata, the reason he's known as one of the most influential is, a very respectable person, is because of the values that he's instilled, right? Respect people, respect customers. He treats customers as gods. So your customers are your only source of business, right? The more you respect them, the more you value them, right? So there are ethics that you are on. So you should never do anything wrong. You should be a good human being. I feel, being a good human being is good. You should be kind to humanity, right?
With a fine line between serving the customers rather than actually, in terms of course, as I've seen, and the exploitation of course, there's the fine balance of actually being the genuine intention. Once again,
exactly.
It's also quite interesting. You mentioned, your camera switched. Oh, okay, but
sorry.
Oh, okay. That's no worries. I just have just one other thing. It's like the adding in the as you mentioned, the intention.
Yeah.
Because once again, saying out loud what my intent is, and this is also for me figuring out the process of genuinely what I feel, because you mentioned the emotional side of things, of how it feels. There must be some sort of intrinsic, truly, like you truly enjoy this.
I truly do, yeah.
When you feel it inside of yourself, rather than when you say it, because they align together, and you feel it. It's interesting because of course that takes time to figure out as well. What is that thing as well that is really driving me towards that? Is it because questioning myself sometimes if is it the output of the I think it's a combination of things, the extrinsic and the intrinsic as well. In terms of extrinsic being the validation of you solving something for someone and being like, thank you, really, for that validation of that, but also the process of it. So it's interesting what the motivation sometimes lies behind, because it can if it's not in line in a way. It's an extremely I think complex as well, but very, very interesting, because it has to align with the others as well that you're solving for the business. I mean, it can seem for me sometimes, it seems like I sometimes forget the end goal in mind, where it's like, why am I actually for example studying engineering, and I forget sometimes when I'm unraveled in the process of it can be
I'll be very honest, it happens to me. Even I used to think, why did I come for my masters? It happens to me. I have thought about this multiple times, but then there are some decisions in life that put you on a certain path. And I will tell you this one thing. Everything in life happens for a reason. I truly believe in that. Okay. Everything in life actually happens for a reason, and you would never be able to find that out until it eventually does. So when you cross that line, when you've crossed that bridge, you would look back and say that, okay, this is why I did it, right? So for my engineering, I used to always be business driven. I used to always be an entrepreneurial guy, and I still am. But I have always thought, why don't I stop all of this and rather just focus on completely business? But I realized that the process of doing so, it has also helped me evolve as an individual, right, with my skill set. Now, obviously you will question yourself, but then your ultimate goal, right? You can never reach your ultimate goal until there's a path to follow. So there's a path to follow to reach your ultimate goal. So your reality and your ultimate goal are two different things. So confusing your reality with your ultimate goal is completely different, because your reality involves of different circumstances, and it's a function of the circumstances because of which you're in that current position right now, and how you're willing to deal with it in order to get with your goal, that is your ultimate goal. So you have to learn to accept what opportunities you get in life and make the most out of it, right? That's what I look at it as. So if I'm studying in the university like this, and I see that, okay, why am I doing so? I look at it as an opportunity. So tomorrow I may be able to network with somebody big tomorrow. So I don't know what life holds for me in the next 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, or maybe 6 years, right? So I might as well just so it's like, this is very important for a lot of people, I would say. Focus on your present.
Can I just say, Aryan, if you don't mind, I'm just cautious of time as well.
Okay.
Would it be okay?
We can end it in 5 minutes. I think it's 55. It's 55. You want to end it in 5 minutes? It's maybe like a 2 hour. It's a proper 2 hour thing.
No, it doesn't matter really in that way. I'm just cautious that because
people get really bored. You want to make it in 2 parts? You can split it up in 2 parts.
Absolutely. In like 1 or 2 minutes, if that's okay, to wrap it up, and if that's okay, that's possible.
Okay, so the most important, I just want to highlight. It's really important to focus on your present. Focus on your present. Live your day as per the present, and at the same time, plan for your future. Work as per your present. Plan for your future. And work accordingly. Right. So it's really important to focus on one thing at a time. Today you're dealing with one thing, focus on that. Don't let what is coming tomorrow, or don't be affected by what's coming tomorrow. You never know what's coming. Right? Focus on your present. So that's what I would say.
That's brilliant advice, actually. That's
because
brilliant.
People get.
This has been a pleasure.
People get really confused.
Sorry. Did you?
I would say people get really confused. Think about multiple things, the future and everything. So focus on your present.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Aryan, it's been a pleasure to speak to you. I'm sorry to wrap it up so quickly. It's just sort of a rant, and of course, I'm sure you have commitments as well.
I actually don't, but in some time from now, I do.
It's been an absolutely a pleasure to talk to you, and also just to get to know you as well. Thank you for reaching out, because I think when we first did, it's been absolutely amazing. Yeah, thank you.
I hope people like it, and then we can do another one sometime.
Absolutely. Have fun with the conversation. Yes, it's a part 2. Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
All right.
Brilliant. Okay. I want to jump in longer. So, thanks so much for your time, and I'll contact you for on LinkedIn for a snapshot of like a picture to put on the thumbnail, if that's okay as well.
Sure thing. Please do. 100%.
Brilliant. Okay. I'll stop the recording now.
Yeah. Perfect.
Okay.